What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Roots and Streams podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Yamas, and just thank you for joining me for another episode. If you've been joining along for this season, just so grateful. I know definitely things have been different this season, been shorter videos, a little bit more focused. I know at times I could be all over the place, and just following along about where I am in my journey of kind of a career transition, new baby, being a father, all the things, and a little update on that. And I know I've shared here, just applying for jobs, figuring out what's new. I have a course creation class that I have coming up on September 29th, and I'm excited to see, the outlet that can become for some creative energy. And I plan on making, at least for now, I think the class is going to take me through choosing what might be the best topic to create a course for based on my skills and what I'm most passionate about. And I think the main thing on there will probably be initially, it just seems readily available. I enjoy it, probably be salsa making, as I mentioned last time. But a smaller update is that, in the job hunt, it's been kind of bleak. I've been applying for things almost daily. I try to get in a job application, and I finally got a job interview. I'm super excited about it. And, part of me was like, oh, don't get too excited. It is a job you really want, but what if you don't get it? There's other applicants. And I had to shut that down really quick and just say, you know what? I'm going to be excited about having a job interview. It's okay. It's not, I didn't get the job. I'm not even like halfway through the process, but I'm going to allow myself to be excited about it. I'm grateful. Thank God for it. And gratefulness is something that has been very helpful for me to get through this season of some uncertainties and some anxieties, some worry. And so I just allowing myself to be excited. So I'm excited for that. It's for still in the educational technology kind of realm. So I'll keep everyone posted on how that is going. And also, just some feedback that I got from the last episode was that it seems like, to one person that was listening and we're watching, was just that this really seemed like these topics, especially the topic that I shared with last week, seemed to be maybe my voice, my niche, maybe the area where it seemed like I was doing the strongest. And, I don't get a lot of feedback on this podcast and a lot of interaction. So, even just hearing that was very helpful, especially when I watched it back and I made this short. I was like, that was pretty good. And I think I'm going to allow myself to continue to make content on this topic, even though it can be kind of intimidating talking about religion and exploring it. If I don't know enough or insecure enough or saying things the right way, maybe some Christians will feel some type of way. If I say things overtly and offend somebody, maybe non-Christians. So I'm not necessarily trying to play any kind of way or the other, just being honest and vulnerable about my exploration, my wonderings, my questioning. And at the same time, I do take people into consideration. I don't want to be here bashing anybody. I don't think that the Bible does that at all. So I'm going to continue on that topic. And so for today, I'm sure the title will already be there. It should be something like, Mama was right. Technology is the devil. And it's kind of a homage to Waterboy. You're probably familiar, shout out to Adam Sandler. You need a Waterboy Part 2. And the way I came about this topic is I was watching some video recently from you might know him, somebody on YouTube, maybe have seen their technology reviews. So shout out to MKBHD. And it's this guy who's really, really famous for doing technology reviews and just going in depth on just things tech. And I was watching a video, him talk about some Meta glasses that are coming out that have augmented reality, like on the lens. And he talked about, that it's going to be coming out. It's not out yet. And just him, I'll keep it short for you. At least this part is that him talking about it and about it coming out and what you can do with it, I felt myself getting kind of like really excited and like, man, I need that. I gotta have it. This can solve X, Y, and Z. And maybe it's just in my age, I'm getting older, or just being more present and aware of when I feel certain things. And I notice that like this anxious excitement and in that need or desire or hope that this thing, this technology can solve something in life for me or make life better. And I noticed that. I was like, wait, why do I feel like this anxious excitement? And I'm to be honest, the tech, the product itself, at the end of it, I'm most likely not going to get it. But it just seemed like one of those things, kind of like when the iPhone first came out or when the iPad first came out. And it made me wonder, because I'm on this whole like diving into what ancient Israelites, how they experienced the Bible, to help me get a better experience, a more empathetic, like a relevant or a better perspective of how they would have been experiencing something. It made me think of, man, is what I'm feeling like idolizing? Is that kind of like worship, or kind of putting my hope in that device? Is this idolatry? And because I know it could take on many forms, and it made me think, as I'm going through these emotions, perhaps like religion, philosophy, and theological things and gods, perhaps for people back then, and I'm just thinking this like randomly, maybe for them, that was their sometimes experience that we kind of get sometimes, or at least for me, I can speak for myself. I'm kind of a tech person. And so you could throw in whatever, maybe it's a makeup product or some tool or something that you feel like it's going to make life that much easier, or this is the thing that's really going to make this experience so much greater and give me peace and time, and this is what I've been needing. And that is kind of the experience I was getting with this piece of technology. So it made me think that maybe there's some kind of connection there. And so I started exploring, like, could that experience that I was experiencing with this hope and possibly idolatry and technology, something similar to what maybe just ancient people, ancient Israelites would have felt around those things like theology, religion, philosophy. And, sure enough, in my reading, like I was sharing from last week, of my journey through the Bible, I read Exodus 32, and right in the first verse, it's a story about when Moses is up on the mountain. So he's their leader, and he's talking to Yahweh, God, on the hill, and he's speaking with God about what they're supposed to do as a people. And the people are waiting down at the bottom, and they're kind of getting impatient. And so he agrees, because they're begging, and they're like, we don't know where Moses is. We need some hope. And he takes all of their gold that they have. And funny enough, you would think, if you know the story a little bit, they're slaves. They were slaves. They've come out of slavery from Egypt, and they have gold. Like, what's up with that? And I'd love to do an episode on that and what that's about. And you're welcome to go and dig on that if you're interested at all. But they have gold, and he takes all the gold, pieces of gold from them, and he puts them into the fire in a mold, and he makes a calf for them to worship. And in deeper research into this, I think my thought and my instinct seemed to be pretty good. And, a god to them was not just a religious ornament, a golden calf. You think it's just this statue and it looks beautiful and that was it. No, and I love this title. It was an operating system of reality. So for them, that feeling of being secure, having trust, that you have hope in something, that something can get better. Without a God in those times, it felt like they were just on their own and they were being left and exposed and naked to the to nature, to just, all the dangers and everything bad that can happen to them, and no water's coming, and we're not going to survive. We need to be able to pray to a God and worship one so that we can have some hope that this God will intervene and make something happen to help with our survival, especially because they would see their neighbors and the societies around them that had their own gods that they were praying to. So kind of in an impatient way, as they're waiting for Moses, they just say, you know what? We're just going to make this golden calf, and this is going to be our God. Like, we just need something to worship. We need something to put our hope in. We need something that is going to just make life better for us. And in a way, having a God was their way of plugging in. The calf was kind of like a human-made interface with divine power. And when it was made and they can see it and it was tangible and it looked beautiful and shiny, I'm sure it made them feel like, whoa, like this meant just wonder and hope that, we have something that we can worship. We have something that looks amazing and, it's so shiny. And Yahweh becomes angry. So God becomes angry when he hears of this, because they couldn't even wait for Moses to come down. He had, in context, the God that they were supposed to be worshiping or waiting on to see what to do next had just freed them from slavery. So it's not like they had no experience with what the God that they had put their trust in. And now connecting it back to technology, it made me think like, and maybe take on a perspective, at least maybe somewhat, with some people when, radio or TV or computers were coming out, and maybe they weren't too far off on, how technology is the devil. And maybe their sense is different than the one I'm gathering now. Mine is more so when we put our hope and our worship so when I say worship, I mean like attention and the thing that can bring us life and peace, because that's really what we're hoping from a lot of technological advances, is that it can make life that much more available. Like, we can live more fully. Like, I can have more time to myself. I can have more time for entertainment. I can have more time with my kids. Things will be more fun. I can be more productive. I can make more money. I can maybe even help more people if this piece of technology, if this solution comes out. And especially something like, and I think about like an iPad or iPhone where, there was all these things that you had to do separately, and then it can just bring them all together. And now this is the solution that's going to make your life better. And I know for me, thinking back, like I would watch keynotes, and maybe they're not as popular as they were, like keynotes for technology, when they talk about like the latest features and this is what we're promising, and here are all the, new things that we added, and this is why it's going to be better. And this is, we're definitely going like the Apple Mac route, like it's better, the best one ever. This is always the best one ever. And I guess it makes sense. It's the newest one. And so in that, and I'm not saying they're 100% equivalent. I'm just saying when we allow our experiences to kind of, and all of our hope, and I can speak for myself, and maybe nobody can relate like with a piece of technology. So take whatever you want and plug it in there. And it's like when you're anticipating something that you don't have that is going to bring you peace. And I know I'm kind of really pushing this point home. It just, like that one verse, I got stuck there on that. It's like one or two verses where it tells that story of when they make the golden calf. And then like looking up like what it meant to them was very impressive to me, was very like profound, that that's what it meant to them, being plugged in to this reality that felt more safe, that they can trust, and that they can pray for more fruit and more water. They just needed something they could see. And I would imagine that those feelings of fear and doubt and distrust and anger were things that they were grasping onto, and their anxiety that drove them to wanting and desiring and feeling the need to create this idol, this new God statue that they could praise, because they couldn't handle the amount of anxiety they were feeling of not having a God that they can see and be present with them physically, and that they can put their hopes into. And in listening into those fears, it makes me think of what some Christians call like Satan, devil, enemy, which places these fears and really makes them ruminate in our head. And as we give into them, we kind of lose touch with who we really are. And we start to do things that maybe we wouldn't have if we didn't allow ourselves. And I wouldn't necessarily say allow ourselves, because sometimes, it feels, I would say even just recently, it feels kind of like it's out of control and I can't help it. And, that idea of the enemy takes me down a rabbit hole of like Satan and the devil, and kind of what even the title of this was. And another connection that I will go down a rabbit hole, and if you'll go with me, about even like, where does the idea of Satan come from? The devil, did God create the devil and hell? And the answer is no, he didn't. Surprisingly, in Genesis, he creates the land, earth, and the heavens, the sky. It never says that he created hell. It never says Satan. It never says the devil. Not in Hebrew, not like some translation. That is never there. And I want to start this second part, this of the rabbit hole, going down the origins of Satan and the devil, of, this past week or week or two, I've been woken up every so often by just this worry. I don't call it anxiety, because for me, anxiety, I really feel like in my chest feels a heaviness, and it's not fun, and it could be worrisome too. But for me, I'm only separating it because I feel like it's just my head is just constant, it's just turning and worrying. And it definitely has to do with kind of being in this in between career wise. It has to do with worrying about, if the money does just all, go in like in a year from now or so, still can't find a job. How am I going to provide? And maybe some of you can relate to this as being parents, or just having responsibilities and maybe getting laid off or having to quit, or things happen. And so my mind, and it happens at night, which is an interesting thing. And I'm not a big person, especially when it comes to like the negative side, big on spiritual things. And I actually just had a conversation about this with some friends. However, it's so curious how it would happen at night. I'm not saying like there's something demonic going on, but I'm not saying it. I don't know. And the Bible doesn't talk a whole lot about that, the spiritual side of like spirits and things, believe it or not. But I did find it odd. Like as it would kind of get dark, I would feel maybe I'm just getting tired. My mind is wandering and things are calming down. So my brain can have more space to think and wonder. And then sometimes in the middle of the night, I'd wake up and, for a little bit, it was like tormenting. And it wasn't until I realized, in this journey that I'm on and I've been on for years, like, wait, prayer, like I can go and pray about this. And whether or not you feel like prayer is a spiritual thing, I think it's close to like at least like meditation. Like these are ancient practices that do have proven, and they have been carried on because they seem to do good for the human experience. And so that, and there possibly is a spiritual aspect to it. And so I go and I pray. I'm grateful. And I remember that, God, you're in control. And I am just going to be grateful for everything I have today. Don't want to worry too far in the future. And as I prayed, I definitely felt like something break. I felt more peace. And I've had to do that a couple of times. And I share this because in my studies of Satan, devil, that name, so the first time we see any of these names is Satan or Satan, and it's not an actual name. It's actually a way to describe something or someone, and it actually means the accuser or the enemy, or what's another word for this? Just something that's like against you, and it's used primarily in a kind of a judicial way, like they would use it in court. So like this person that's like against you in the court, that is accusing you of something. And so funny enough that the first time that word Satan, and if you're not going like chronological, because technically I think Job is written first, but let's just put that to the side. The first time that word Satan is used is actually not for something like evil or dark. It's used to describe an angel of God, an angel of Yahweh, who is an accuser, who is against Balaam, who is trying to curse the Israelites. So in the Bible, the first time that word comes up is not for the serpent in the garden or anything like that. It's actually used to describe an angel who is an accuser, who is against someone who's trying to curse the Israelites. So to me, that's a sign that, maybe this word has a deeper history, more nuanced meaning. And Tim Mackey likes to point out how majority of the time, almost all of the time that word Satan is used, it's not used as like the Satan, like or as a person, or as a title, I guess I should say. It's more used to describe somebody or an action or kind of their position. And I bring that up, one, to kind of dive into the rabbit hole of like, where does Satan come from? And then devil comes from diabolos, which is like Greek, Latin. And that also primarily is used in a judicial way. And it has a similar meaning of being like the adversary, the person that's against you in court. And so these titles, well, they're not real, they're more so like to describe a person, not so much like the name of a person. It's only as we get later into the Christian practices and as it develops that it starts to become more of an actual character. And it wasn't originally like that. So I just think that's interesting, because as I focus more, as I have been in my studies, more on the side, if I haven't lost you yet, that it's the accuser. And so when I'm going through this experience of, man, my mind is worry and I'm being tormented and it's late at night. And as I reflected on that, I take in a minute, like, what is going on here? Like, why am I worrying so much? Like, I'm praying about it. And I'm grateful for where I am, taking it one day at a time. Like, I just felt like it feels like somebody or something. I don't want to say somebody, because I don't know exactly what's going on here, but something is like accusing me. It's telling me how like, you're not going to figure it out. You need to wake up right now at 2 a.m. and figure out what's going to go on with your family and finances. And it wouldn't let me sleep. And as much as I would try to ignore it, it wouldn't be until I would pray and just kind of center myself. And that idea of it being accuser really clicked for me. So it's just interesting how I just noticed, like, okay, I think that experience that I've read about, like being like something accusing you and something telling you, like, false things about who you really are and what's going to happen. Like it was helpful for me because I was able to pinpoint it and like know what I'm praying against. Like when Jesus is told, like he tells Peter, who is like one of his devout followers, like, get behind me, Satan. He's actually talking to like the actions and to how Peter is telling him something about that he is not supposed to do, right? He's trying to talk him out of what he needs to do to save the world. And so he realizes that he's trying to speak something into him that is not that he hasn't been told, and that is not a reflection of who he is. And so he has to deny that and has to make sure like, hey, no, I'm going to stop that train of thought. I need to put that down, and because that is not right. That is against, right, the loving, forgiving, graceful, merciful ways of what my Father is telling me to do, as generous and as helpful as Peter was trying to be. And I just wanted to share that. And it was almost like a test, to be honest, right? So when we feel those things, and I'm not saying, just pray it away. I think I'm a huge believer and signed up for therapy and mental health and counseling. And I take those things serious. But I also believe that prayer and having hope in something and knowing and reading things that are telling us who we are in a positive way, in a powerful way, are very helpful as well. And so that kind of finishes like that rabbit hole of like who Satan is, where does that name come from? And I encourage you to look deeper into it. It's funny enough, like the horns thing does come from like art and stuff and from like animals, but also some descriptions connect like horns like to like positive things of like being radiant and like rays like the sun. And I'll leave that there. So the third point is like the test versus the temptation. And I want to like draw on two things here. So one, how going back to Exodus, the story of Exodus, where the Israelites are waiting on Moses to come down with the message from this God, Yahweh, that has set them free. And one thing that stands out is how Yahweh is one who is calm, patient, and even has this, it feels like we're just waiting, while he does things in his time, in his will. And sometimes we may feel like he's forgotten about us. And they become impatient, right? And they take the matter into their own hands, right? And so this is like where this test versus temptation, it's like some people think, well, God is tempting me. He's leading me into this route. And honestly, I don't think he necessarily means to like in a hurtful, malicious way test you. But the way he goes about ruling his kingdom is in a very patient, slower way than what we're used to. And we've only ramped it up, in the last, 20, 30, 50 years or so with technology and how fast and money, everything moves. Even for them in that time, in ancient times, in the story of Exodus, they felt like God was moving too slow. And they were getting really worried. And this isn't a society that's like fast moving and fast food. So you can only imagine for us how much more temptation, how much that we get, and how much harder the test can feel because of our culture of fast everything. And I would say that even sometimes when we've gotten a word from somebody, or we felt it in prayer, or maybe you hear it, an audible voice telling you, hey, this is what's going to come up in your future. And even after hearing all that, we still can not pass the test of waiting on God's timing. And this is during these periods is when that accuser can come in and find an opportunity to tempt us, So we are in this test. We are waiting. We are trying to have faith. We are pushing back, fear and anxiety. And we're just saying, oh, no, I'm going to have faith. I'm grateful for everything I have today. But then sure enough, this accuser is coming in. Now this is similar to kind of some garden, some Adam and Eve imagery is coming in, at a time where nothing's really going on and we're just waiting. And that's when, to me, the temptation. So this test versus temptation. So the temptation is coming almost all the time while we're being tested, while we're waiting. And the temptation can be to take things into our own hands, our own efforts, our own will. And that's when we make grave mistakes, is when we think we know it all, right? I have all the answers. I can figure it out. My way is right. I have the right perspective. I have the right opinions. And this is the way it should be. Instead of being patient, maybe listening, maybe taking a break from an argument and letting things cool off, or taking a break from a job if you feel like your family is like gonna burst and you can't take it anymore, and trusting that your finances will be okay. And, really the only thing that I have found that is worth idolizing is Yahweh, is God. And I'm on my journey even through this, even growing up, in a Christian environment and reading the Bible and just kind of being on this journey for many years now. I'm still building up my faith. I'm still learning the character of God and being in this honestly ongoing experience, right? I said at the beginning, like even getting a job interview, I'm like, okay, thank you, God, for this. And I'm grateful for it. And it's this ongoing experience. And am I going to just impatiently and fearfully just make things happen, or get angry and take it out on people, or just get really petty? Or can I just take a moment and just take a breath and not give in to those temptations and say, I think I can pass this test. I'm going to put my faith where I think it needs to be. And everything else outside of what God has for me next is going to ultimately leave me empty. It's going to leave me misguided, disappointed, and left with an unquenchable thirst. So when I say, Mama got it right, technology is the devil, and really to say that there are so many things that are telling us this is what's going to give you hope, this is what's going to give you security, this is what's going to give you, life to the fullest. It's like, take a moment and say, is this worth putting my attention to? Is this worth putting my worship in, my hope in? And even if it's not, but you don't know what else to do, I would say just take a minute, maybe take a week, maybe just pray on it, talk to somebody about it, because it's most likely that when we act out of anxiety, we are probably giving into a temptation that's not meant for us. And there's so much more meant for us if we can just take a moment and really try to connect with the creator of the universe to see what he has in store for us. And I'm on this journey. I get worried. I'm sometimes wondering, should I be applying for jobs, or should I be waiting? Is there something coming? Is something falling from the sky? Well, no, nothing's just going to fall from the sky from your lap. It's a wrestling. It's an experience. And it's not one that I necessarily wish on anyone, but we're all going through it, right? And I just wanted to take a moment of this experience, a couple stories that I had with you all. That's all I have to share for today. I'm looking for guests. I'm more than happy to keep sharing about my Bible studies, what I'm discovering. Maybe you find it interesting. And I think there's room for guests. I know Mario has mentioned that he wants to come on. He feels like he has nothing to share, but we'll figure that out. And until next time, everybody, peace.